I always wanted to serve on a jury.
I'm really super excited to be here, so I really appreciate you having me. I'm looking forward to it.
Creating this whole trial, Daddy.
I want to give a big shout out to the 13th Jury Podcast and Brandi.
Yeah, I applaud you guys. Keep doing what you're doing.
That every time you run into Phil Barber, you should reach for it.
And then I just looked to the jury, and it's sort of like, look.
I was in the eye of the storm, and you guys were watching the storm.
Hey, if you're bored of work, come pop in and say, hey, want some coffee?
You are a ray of sunshine, and I love what you've done with your YouTube channel.
Hi. Hi. Hello. Hello, hello, hello. Hi, guys. Hi, hi, hi. Sorry, I am in the middle of, oh, there's not enough time in the day. Okay, let me get out of all of this. All right, we have the state rested today. I am going to, it looks like the first 20 minutes are going to be arguments about what text messages come in. So we're going to skip through that. We're going to skip through as much of this as we can. Because the state rested, we want to get to any of the important stuff. Let's see. Come on. I wish y'all could see how many tabs I have open. I do not have enough time in the day. All right. Live. Share. All right.
AMUND.
This is.
And what do you do for work?
I'm employed as an investigator with the La Crosse County Sheriff's Office.
How long have you been an investigator with that agency?
So he's an investigator. We're going to skip through the, this is what you do for a living. This is how you're so smart,
yes,
etc.
Investigator Leinfelder.
Throughout this investigation, were there electronic communication records of the people involved retrieved by your agency?
Yes.
Did that include Nya Thao's records?
Yes.
Specifically his Facebook records?
Yes.
And how did your agency obtain those records?
Those records were obtained by serving a search warrant to.
Okay, again, we don't need, well, you know how search warrants work. Let's get to the actual text. This is the part that's important.
Nya, yes, it's the content of the 3,633 pages of Facebook records.
3,633 pages.
Fairly and accurately represent the information in the data as it was provided to the Sheriff's Department from Facebook?
Yes.
If you could then turn to Exhibit 98, Investigator. What is this document?
This document is a certificate of authenticity of domestic records of regularly conducted activity.
Yeah, we get it. Get to the stuff.
And is that page at the top?
The target number is 1
Audio is terrible today.
334 14 79 5163.
Date of the report is? Name that's associated with the account?
The first name is Cushy, spelled Koushi. There's nothing in the middle name and the last name of Thao, Thao.
Can you tell me what the registered email address is for the account?
Okay, so it doesn't matter the email.
And that's
56 and 20, correct.
All right, so these are Kush.
the 9th of April in 2021.
Yes, there is.
And what is that cell phone number?
1-608-667-7666. 7662.
And from your knowledge of this investigation, is that a number that has been associated with Mr. Thao and his communication with others throughout this case,
Yes.
specifically with Bridget Schlicht?
Yes.
Is there also credit card information associated with this account?
Yes, there is.
And what is the first and last name of the credit card payee or payer there?
Cushy.
All right. Again, they're just verifying that this is all Kush.
Relevancy. Yeah, that makes sense.
What's the last page of the paper document you have in front of you?
Yes.
And what is that a photograph of?
There's a photograph of United States Postal Mail addressed to Nya Thao.
And it has an Onalaska address.
Again, this is all verifying that it's him. Let's
If
get
you
to the actual messages.
Does it indicate further contents of that document?
Yes. Be Facebook communication between Nya Thao and assorted others.
And does the information in this exhibit fairly and accurately represent the selected messages from the Facebook account that is associated to Mr. Thao?
Yes, yes, yes.
Your Honor, I'd move for the admission of Exhibit 97. I'm going to record
Receive 97.
Come on.
messages on this page.
From Nya Thao's Facebook to
Okay, here we
Nemo
go.
Yang.
And can I have you one by one go through those messages for us?
At 9:34 and 30 seconds a.m.
All right, I'm not going to listen to him read it because he's so slow. Okay, so they have it cut off, but he said 9:30. What did he say? 9:34? Yeah, 9:34 and 30 seconds a.m. Okay, so this is between the defendant and Nemo. This is the one that they believed stole money from him. Okay, so the defendant says to the victim, "Hey, you need to get that 80 to my big bro when gets better today. You hear me? He's coming to collect only." He said, "All right." He said, "May Teal talk, Nemo. He ain't playing games. Real talk." He meant real talk. So he's telling him, hey, you need to get Black that money. He's not playing. He's coming to collect. And notice it's the K's for collect.
Nya, when he gets 2 seconds a.m.
All right, we don't need to hear you. I just read it. We don't need you. So this is him trying to get the money.
At 7:21 and 2 seconds p.m., Nya, games, hours gone. At 7:22 and 5 seconds p.m., Nya, you're too late. At 7:22 and 10 seconds p.m., Nya, I told you already. At 7:22 and 45 seconds p.m., Nya, when are you going to get the money? At 7:23 and 21 seconds p.m., Nya, cuz he tripped me, say me.
We can proceed to the next page.
So the first messages were around 9 o'clock that morning. By 7 o'clock, the defendant is like, it's too late. When you going to get that money? Like so it sounds like he was mad that Nemo is avoiding him.
Please. What are we looking at here, investigator?
On July 20th of 2021, from Nya to Nemo Yang.
Can you please read this for us?
At 12:49 and 35 seconds p.m., Nya, bro, we need to see like 60 to 80 to big bro. He needs new tires.
Can I have us go to the next page, please? And is this where we start the other portion of the communication, investigator?
Yes,
These would be messages from Nya Thao to other people.
yes.
Will you proceed to the next page, please? What are we looking at here?
This is a communication from July 3rd of 2021 to a person by the name of Shannon Gage.
Can you read that for us, please?
At 8:50 and 46 seconds a.m., Nya, I had my bro Black Benz earlier.
Go to the next page, please. And what are we looking at here, investigator?
This is a communication on July 13th of 2021 to a person identified as Julia Hedham.
Can you read these to us?
6:23 and 47 seconds p.m. Nya, Jan, I kind over late with my bro Black. At 6:24 and 5 seconds, Nya, I want you to meet.
Go to the next page, please. What are we looking at here, investigator? And you can go ahead and read the message for us after you identify it.
That's a communication on July 21st of 2021 to a person by the name of Thai with the last spelling of VWJ at 7:32 and 38 seconds a.m. Nya. It's all online shit. I can guarantee half the money till my bro Black is here and give me the other.
If we go to the next page, can I have you identify this for me, investigator, and then read the associated messages?
This is communication between the evening of July 16th of 2021 through July 17th of 2021 to Chinoa Dawn at 9:15 and 3 seconds p.m. Nya. Have you seen my debit card? At 9:32 and 38 seconds p.m. Nya. Looking for it. It's my mission. At 9:33 and 0 seconds p.m. Nya. I'm missing all my money. It's all I have. At 12:48 and 47 seconds a.m. Nya. I'm bummed about it. At 12:48 and 57 seconds a.m. Nya. Nemo had to have taken it.
We can go to the next page.
Okay, so this is where the whole thing starts with him saying that, with them thinking that Nemo took his money and his cards.
And this is the last one. Can I please have you identify this for me and then go ahead and read the content?
A communication in the evening of July 18th through July 19th of 2021 to Nicole Wisniewski at 11:17 and 14 seconds p.m. Nya. There was an outgoing call that was not answered. At 11:31 and 7 seconds p.m. From Nya, outgoing call not answered. 11:33 and 34 seconds p.m. Outgoing call not answered. 1:02 and 56 seconds a.m. Outgoing call not answered. At 1:03 and 26 seconds a.m. Outgoing call not answered. At 1:04 and 0 seconds a.m. Nya. All right, Butch, have it your way. ... LMFAO. At 1:04 and 50 seconds a.m. Nya. Tell Nemo Gaunts he won't show himself. I'm going for his family.
Ooh.
Thank you. I have nothing further, Judge.
Cross?
So all of those calls and he's not getting his answer that he's wanting. So he tells him, tell Nemo if he won't show himself, I'm going for his family.
It's the authentication. I would do so now.
Agreed. 96 will be received.
Come on.
Excellent, thank you.
Don't get to hear excellent very often, so great. I want to ask you some questions about the work you did in this case, okay?
Okay,
The first work you did was you did an interview of Bridget Schlick, correct?
correct.
And as you said, you met with her on July 23rd, about 12:25 in the afternoon, and you eventually sat down and had an interview with her, correct?
Correct,
You weren't alone when you did that, correct?
correct.
And there was another law enforcement officer there with you, we know, right?
Yes,
And this was all audio, video recorded, correct?
yes.
As is policy there at La Crosse County Sheriff's Department, right?
Best practice, yes.
Best practices, certainly, sure. In this interview on that day, she was there, Bridget was there that day for about 11 hours, correct?
Correct,
A lot of that was spent with in what you would call an interview, right?
yes,
Some of that was she was alone in the room sleeping.
possibly, yes.
And some of that was she was given opportunities to eat and other personal needs, correct?
Correct,
That's the entire 11 hours, right?
correct.
Okay. That interview, things evolved over that 11 hours, fair to say?
Yes,
And I, at least in my head, a couple of different sections, you might have different ones, so I want to go through those so we can see how it evolved over time. Does that make sense?
yes,
Because that's not unusual in your work, that when somebody sits in that chair and they talk to somebody talk to law enforcement about what happens, it might change over the course of that time, correct?
At times, yes.
Sometimes the person is honest right away, correct?
Yes.
And sometimes they're never honest.
Yes.
And sometimes it's a process to pull out the honest bits, correct?
Correct.
He's
So,
so tedious in
In
his
this
question.
case, when you first met with her, fair to say, at least for that first 30 minutes, right? It was just, again, that's maybe too technical of a term, but emotional management.
I think that's fair to say, yes.
You know, she was, as you said, distraught, overwhelmed, shaking, crying, all of those things, right?
Yes.
Okay. But at some point, you got to a space and a place with her where you could ask her questions and get the content from her about kind of like what was going on, right?
Yes.
And that was, didn't get much content in the first 30 minutes. It was somewhere in the first hour where you started to actually be able to get content from her, right?
Yes.
All right. And when I say relevant content about like what you'll eventually know, she had knowledge about what happened at the quarry earlier that day, right?
Correct.
Okay. Now, I want to ask you some questions about statements she made to make clear to you her mindset, right? Her state of emotional situation, her state of mental situation, okay?
Okay.
There was definitely times in there where she said things like, I don't want you guys to think I'm lying or doing anything bad, correct?
Yes.
And from that, you gathered that she, sitting in that chair, was aware of how you and the other law enforcement officer might perceive her, correct?
I think that she had concern on how we would perceive her.
Yeah. And some of that concern, she essentially indicated she didn't want to get in trouble, right?
Correct.
Yeah. And she made that clear to you that she's telling you information with, in her mind, concerns about her being in trouble for the information that she gives you, correct?
Correct.
And you, how long have you been a law enforcement officer? Since 98, you said?
Yes.
So that's what, 26 years? We don't have to test our math, a long time, right?
Yes.
He didn't come here to math.
And during that time, you certainly know that when there's a person comes in, it's not always clear to you whether that person, it's not always, sometimes it is, whether that person is a victim, a witness, or a suspect, correct?
Correct.
It's not always easy to put a human being in a particular box as they fit this role, right?
Right. They can be a combination of everything.
Correct. And part of what you're trying to figure out is across that, I'll call it a spectrum, a continuum, where they sit, perhaps, right?
We can't label them until we know all the information.
Sure. But once you kind of get an idea, you're going to treat a person who you think is a victim maybe different than a person who you think is a witness, different than a person who you think is a suspect, right?
I'm going to treat them all fairly and equally.
Absolutely. But there are different tools that you know as an investigator that you might use to get information from somebody, and depending upon your opinion about whether they're a suspect, a witness, or a victim, you might apply those tools in a different way.
Correct.
Okay. And it also depends upon what that person sitting in that seat thinks of themselves, correct?
Yes.
Right? Because a person who perhaps thinks that they're, just again, hypothetically, thinks that they're a witness might not be concerned about things and just freely and openly share everything with you because they have no concerns that they're a suspect, correct?
I think witnesses, you have to, everybody discloses at different paces. So it doesn't make a difference on what they are. It's how they disclose it.
And I'm your experience in talking to people in that chair. The person in that chair's perception of themselves, right? They have a perception of themselves. You're aware of that, right?
Correct.
And their own perception will perhaps limit, guide, influence what they share with you, correct?
I think that comes to the individual person.
You agree that it could, right?
But
and what we know in this situation is that when Bridget Schlick was sitting in there, she was worried about how you would perceive her, right?
I can't answer to what Bridget was perceiving.
She said words to you, correct?
Yes.
When she said words to you, you'd listen to those words, correct?
Correct.
And so when she said, like, I don't want you guys to think I'm lying or doing anything bad, you'd think about that, and then you'd consider that and how you're going to continue your interview, correct?
Correct. It's a factor.
Yeah, and what you learned is she's worried about being considered a suspect, correct?
I think she's worried about a lot of things.
Including worried about being a suspect.
Yes.
So, just to, again,
by the way, oh, sorry. I'm having cramps. Both sides have now rested, so closing arguments on this are going to be Monday.
I chunk it out. I want to talk about the first, essentially, 3 hours and 20 minutes, okay?
Okay.
And do you know why I picked 3 hours and 20 minutes?
No.
In the first 3 hours and 20 minutes, Bridget Schlick does not identify the people who were up at the quarry, correct?
I don't have a reason not to believe you, so I don't.
When I
recall.
say she identifies some of the people, correct? She identifies that she's with Nemo Yang and Peng Lor and Trevor Maloney, correct?
Correct.
But in that first 3 hours and 20 minutes, she says that there's 2 other people that were there, correct? That there's 6 people, correct? The 3 decedents, Bridget Schlick, and the 2 unnamed people, correct?
Yes.
And it's not until about 3 hours and 20 minutes where she begins to identify who those other 2 are, correct?
Correct.
First, she says Kush, right, at around 3:20.
Yes.
And then about 5-10 minutes later, after you gather information about who's Kush, she says Black, correct?
Correct.
All right. But in those first 3 hours and 20 minutes, she tells you some lies, correct?
Yes.
So I want to go through some of those lies that she told. Essentially, the first lie that she told you is she said she wasn't at the quarry when the shooting occurred. Agreed?
Yes.
Her first story to you is she gets to the quarry, an unnamed person points a gun at her and tells her to leave. She leaves, and then she learns about the deaths via Facebook. Is that right?
Yes.
That's her first story, right?
Yes.
And
She said she learned about the deaths by Facebook.
eventually she changes that story, correct?
She said that she was lying at first.
Now, and again, as she's changing that story, sometimes she's telling you things that are wrong about what happened, correct? At least according to her final version. She has a final version that she eventually gives you, correct?
Yes.
Some of the things she tells you in that first 3 hours and 20 minutes are contradictory to the final version, correct?
Yes.
Which is what we're calling now, or I'm calling, lies, and you agree, correct? If she said she lied about it, right?
Yes.
Okay. One of the other lies that she tells you as far as a category is, she tells you, I don't know who those other 2 guys are.
Yes.
And she says that, I believe, repeatedly in that first 3 hours and 20 minutes.
Sorry, he's so slow. Or maybe I'm just bored with his questioning.
Fair to say in that first 3 hours and 20 minutes, again, this is perhaps a summary, in that first 3 hours and 20 minutes, she is not providing you any facts that connect her to those 2 unnamed individuals. Agreed?
Seriously, me too.
She's saying, I don't know them, they're not on my phone, I wasn't hanging out with them, these 2 guys come there. She's distancing herself, not connecting herself to those 2 people. Agreed?
I would say it's fairly accurate.
Okay. And then, as we know, after this 3 hour and 20 minutes, she then says something about Kush, right? And then eventually she says something about Black, correct?
Yes.
All right. In that first 3 hours and 20 minutes.
Remember, she said that she didn't really trust police at first, and she said that she was, she admitted to lying at first, and she said that she was lying because she doesn't really trust police, and that she was scared to tell them everything, and then she eventually came clean. So he's going through all those lies now, but we're not shocked that she's lying. We already knew that, so now he's just going through the lies.
She uses pronouns talking about the 2 unnamed suspects, correct?
Which pronouns?
He, him.
Yes.
Right? Instead of a person's name, she just says a pronoun he or him, right? A male pronoun.
Correct.
Occasionally she'll use the pronoun they, correct?
Yes.
And in that context, you took it to mean the pronoun used in a plural sense.
Yes.
So he's so tedious.
There was times during that first 3 hours and 20 minutes where she talked about a he with the gun, correct?
Yes.
And eventually in that first 3 hours and 20 minutes, she corrects her lie and tells you, I was there, I saw the shooting, right?
Yes.
And then she uses the pronoun he shot him, correct?
Yes.
And up to that point, she'd always use the pronoun he to associate that with the older man with the gun. Agreed?
I would have to look at the transcript on that.
Okay.
It sounds like he's trying to arrange her testimony, the vagueness of using pronouns for the 5 different he's to make it so that it's
Can I approach Judge?
assuming that
Attorney Nelson, can you
she
show me what you're going to show him before you do?
said he referring to Black instead of Kush.
Ask you about this section here, which I've called number 2. I'm going to ask you about this section here, which I've got number 3. Go through here. This section here, probably number 6 as well as 7. Does that make sense? So I'm going to ask you about those. I'm going to give you a chance now to perhaps, 2, 3, 6, and 7. If you want to read those to yourself, then I see if that refreshes your memory, put things into context. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
I want to skip through while he... Nikki says, I'm sorry, but those text messages from him sealed it for me. Yeah, saying that he's going to come after Nemo's family?
Appreciate your diligence. You're not going to be expected to memorize anything. If you ever need
Man,
to see this again, just ask and we can show it to you. Make sense?
Thank you.
I am so curious why this was a hung jury the first time.
Establish the timeline. You reviewed the transcript and you saw what I marked out as part number 2, the clip number 2, I'm going to call it, okay?
Yes.
And essentially, that's the clip which we already talked about, where she, I think at about 12-minute mark, tells you the lie about not being there. I saw it on Facebook, correct?
Yes.
But within that, she uses the pronoun he, correct?
Yes.
Right. And when she does that, she says things like, he got everyone out of the car, correct?
Yes.
And then 30 seconds later, she says some things that are different than that, right? About 60 seconds later, clip number 3. If we're going to look at the time, would it help to look at the times again?
I have no reason not to believe that's close.
And she tells you essentially, I was scared. I know it looks bad, right?
Yes.
She says, I don't know because I didn't know what was going to happen. And then something about a shooter, correct?
Right.
And then she says, I didn't know they were going to die until he did that, correct?
Yes.
So she's again using the pronoun he, right?
Correct.
And then just below that,
I haven't been able to find it at
never
all.
had a gun pointed at me in my life, correct?
Correct.
And then as I again skip forward, now we're
Maybe?
hours forward, clip number 6 and number 7 that I had you review. You remember that?
Yes.
And that's at about, according to the transcript, 3 hours and 20 minutes into it, correct?
I wonder if
And she's still at this point
there
not
was
yet
something-
named the 2 people that were up there, correct?
Correct.
And she's
I wonder
still
if it was something
using
to do with
the
Black.
pronoun he to describe either or both a person, correct?
Correct.
because they didn't call Black to testify this time, but they did last time. And I'm wondering if there was something about his testimony that was bad for their case that could have been the result or could have resulted in the hung jury. Because otherwise, I don't know why they wouldn't call him, especially if he was also saying, according to the journalists that were in there, he was saying that the same thing that Bridget said, basically that he, well, other than not the exact same thing. He said he was just looking at his playlist and then all of a sudden, oh my gosh, shots rang out. But so part of it was him making, maybe that's why though. Maybe because he was so ridiculous with his story, like so unbelievable with his story that they didn't believe it. And maybe that's what could have caused the hung jury, maybe. I feel like if they're not calling him this time, maybe that has something to do with it.
And the times
What do y'all
when she
think?
uses he, and she'll talk about the person with the gun, right?
Yes.
He was in the back of the car and he just had the gun out the window. Question, pointed at you, yeah, and said, follow me, correct?
Well, it said it. I think you wrote gun in on yours.
Correct. In the context of that, when she uses the word it, you understand she's saying the it that is pointed at her from a man in a car when they're sitting in the Holiday Inn parking lot who then commands her to follow her, that it is reference to a gun, right?
Most likely, yes.
And then in fact, just seconds later, she's asked by your partner, he has his driver's side window down, he's pointing the gun at you, and she responds, yeah, it was like this within the car. And that's when she raises her hands and extends it and points the gun at you guys. Or a pretend gun, right?
Yeah, it wasn't a real gun.
Obviously. Make sense?
Yes.
Within the context, when she's talking about the he, there's oftentimes in that first 3 hours and 20 minutes that you come to learn the he she's talking about is the older man that she describes with the gun, correct?
That she describes as Black, yes.
Correct. Okay.
No, both sides
And
rested
then it's
today.
when, again, just the 320, she talks about Kush and Black, and she gives a description of each of them, correct?
Yes.
And she says about Kush, who you come to learn is Nya Thao, correct?
Correct.
She describes him in that, when she's in that distraught state talking about it, she said, he's short, bald, kind of quiet, correct?
I don't remember exactly if that was a statement, but sounds
Sound
accurate.
Oops. I wish I could find the,
She says, short, bald, kind of quiet, is that right?
I wish they had
Part of the
video.
statement, yes.
Okay.
I do know that some of his statements are going to be read into the record today. Or were
And then
read
she's
into the
talking
record.
about what, if any, connections she has to these two people that she's now named as Kush and as Black, correct?
You repeat the question?
Yeah. After she identifies who these other two people were. So now you, as an investigator, you're like, there's 6 people up there. I have the names of 4. I have ways to identify the other 2, but which might not be their birth names, but you've got names in a very loose sense, correct?
Yes.
All right. And as part of that, then you're trying to figure out, okay, not just who is Kush from a character standpoint, but who is Kush from identify that human being, right?
Correct.
And same for Black, correct?
Correct.
And you are getting some information from her about perhaps who they are in a character sense, right?
Yes.
At least her interpretation of it.
Correct.
And then you're also getting information from her about other ways that might help you to identify them, correct?
Yes.
Like, are they in your phone, right?
Yes.
Right? And she, in relation to Kush, she tells you the truth, correct? She's like, he's in my phone. I've had contacts with him. He's going to be there, correct?
Yes.
And when it comes to Black, she lies.
He did not disclose Black immediately, no.
Well, in particular, you asked about Black being in her phone, and she lied, right?
He did not tell us, no.
She said he's not in my phone, correct?
Yes.
That's different than failing to disclose. She told you the opposite of the truth, which we commonly call a lie, right?
Yes.
Okay. She was also, so you continued your investigation to figure out how you could figure out who this Black was, right?
Yes.
You had less information about him because she didn't give you as much information, correct?
Correct.
And one of the questions that came out over those first 6 hours was whether she had had a sexual relationship with Black, correct?
Yes.
And she, again, when talking about Black, lied, correct?
Correct.
She was specifically asked, did you have sex with him? And she said, no. Agreed?
Yes.
It's not that she just failed to disclose it.
Okay, but also asking a girl, did you have sex with this person who she just saw kill people? I feel like, I'm not saying that everything that Bridget did was right, but I feel like that some of the judgment against her is, if the roles were reversed and it was a woman who had shot them and it was a dude that they were questioning, would they be like, have you slept with her? I feel like it's a different
She misled you.
level.
Yes.
She deceived you.
Yes.
You don't know why she misled or deceived you, correct? I mean, you'll probably have some hypotheses, but in theory, you don't know why, right?
Correct.
One of the reasons might be is she's trying to distance herself from this person, correct?
Once again, I don't know the reasons why.
Okay.
So
You look like you were contemplating potential reasons, right?
I don't think it's fair to hypothesize on that.
Okay.
Initially.
It's hard to know why she lied unless we ask her, correct?
Correct.
And if she's not willing to even admit to the lie, we'll never know, right?
Correct.
Another lie she told you in that first interview was about Black and his phone, correct?
Can you rephrase the question, what you mean by that?
Sure. She, again, you asked her about, is Cushing your phone? And she said yes, and that turned out to be true.
Correct.
You asked if Black was in her phone, and she said no, correct?
Correct.
That turned out to be a lie, correct?
Correct.
And she maintained that lie over the entire course of that first day of July 23rd, correct?
Correct.
She continually said, he's not in my phone, he's not in my phone, I don't call him, I don't talk to him, he's not there. Agreed?
I don't know if she said all those things,
That's certainly what she led you to believe, right?
that he wasn't in her phone.
Which would mean no texts, no calls, she doesn't contact him, right?
I don't know the answer to that.
All right. And you've been a part of this case investigation, I would imagine, certainly in the beginning, if not throughout the entire 3 years that brings us to today, right?
Yes.
At some point, you got her phone, correct?
Yes.
It was at the end of the day on the 23rd, right?
Yes.
And fair to say that she was reluctant to give you her phone, right?
Yes.
You don't know why she didn't want to give you the phone.
He did not state a specific reason.
You just know, if she made it clear to you, she doesn't want you to have that phone, correct?
Well, she did give us the phone.
Agree. She was reluctant at the beginning. There needed to be some persuasion that you did, correct?
Yes.
You got that phone, and then you did what is
I agree,
you or
Courtney.
somebody in your department, the police department, did an extraction, correct?
Yes.
An extraction is where you essentially make a digital copy of everything that's inside the phone, and then you can check it, right? You can use it to check what somebody said, correct?
Yes.
You could use it for lots of other reasons too, correct?
Yes.
It wasn't until you did the extraction and confronted her with the information that was in the phone on July 26th until she told you the truth about black being in her phone, correct?
She remembered black being in her phone when we asked who was London Bridges falling down.
And
Such a
she
long
then-
name.
She didn't come in on the 26th and say, you know what, I didn't tell you the truth before, let me tell you the truth now, correct? It wasn't until you confronted her with, we got this phone evidence and we're trying to figure out who London Bridges falling down is, correct?
Correct.
And then that's when she says, it's black, correct?
Yes.
And her story to you is, I didn't remember that.
It was something similar to that, yes.
And what you came to learn eventually, not in July of 2021, but you came to learn eventually from her that she deleted lots of information on her phone prior to coming to the police station, right?
Yes.
So on the morning of the 23rd, sometime after she leaves the quarry until she gets to the police station at 12:30-ish in the afternoon, during that time, she clearly had knowledge in her head that black is in my phone, correct?
I don't know the answer to that.
Well, what we know is she took an action to delete all of the stuff about black in her phone, right?
I think she took action, if I recall, to delete a lot of things out of her phone.
One of those things was her contact with black, correct?
Correct.
In order to take that affirmative action to delete it, she needed to have knowledge that it was there, correct?
I don't know what her thought process was, if she was just deleting all of her drug contacts or what. I don't know.
You would agree that a human being can't take action to delete an item that exists unless they know of its existence. They'd have to have that knowledge.
Objection, Your Honor.
Cam,
Yeah,
K-H-A-M,
it's argumentative. He's answered the question. He said she
something, it's a
deleted,
long name.
all
Rattanasack.
the information. Go ahead.
You don't know why she deleted that, correct?
Well, she had stated that she just didn't want to believe that it was real and she just wanted the stuff off her phone.
Okay.
Something similar to that.
Okay. She also told you she didn't tell you about black because she'd forgot about black, correct?
Told us about black.
On the 26th, when she came in and you confronted her, who's London Bridges, she said, oh yeah, I forgot.
Hold on. I can't find the whole thing, but I just found this. See what this is. This is Rattanasack.
Where did they get moved to? Towards the gate. And how were they positioned at the gate? They were, I don't, kneeling, sitting. I don't know which one. Like I said, in the paranoid state I was at, it was hard for me to pay attention because I still didn't trust Bridget. I didn't know what was going on because she was saying, is there anything I can do to help? She said it multiple times, but she wasn't directing it towards me. Who was she directing it towards? She was directing it towards pushing the guys. I don't know if she was talking to Push or if she was talking to them or whatever, but it wasn't directed at me because I just... Did you see the individuals empty their pockets? Yeah, I told them, I said, you guys are going to keep fighting. I'm the one that said it. I told him, I was like, listen, he doesn't have any money because I had already talked to Nemo. And I was trying to explain to Push, like, this is what I talked to Nemo about. I was like, he doesn't have any money, he doesn't have any drugs. I said, I don't care about money, I don't care about the drugs. I said, I just want to get out of here. I think you said you told them to empty the pockets. I did, yes. Did they? Yes. Did their phones come out of the pockets? I don't remember. I don't remember what came out of the pockets because when I just walked away after I had said it. What happened next? I walked over to my car to get into the driver's seat, and then I see Bridget advancing, and I heard a gunshot, went into the air. Then I heard a lot of yelling and screaming at one another, and I just yelled over the question. I was like, dude, stop playing around. I was like, you know, like, they don't have anything, like, dude, stop. Just, if you're trying to scare them, whatever, stop playing. I said, let's just go. Like, I don't have time for this. I'm done with this town. I said, I'm getting out of here. I don't want anything to do with it. Are you saying that there was a gunshot fired in the air or not at the people? Yeah, it was fired in the air. Because, I mean, you can tell, I guess, I mean, because I seen the spark going upwards. And what happened next? I got into my vehicle. Bridget walked up to the car. I rolled my window down just a little bit, and she kept trying to talk to me. And I just told her, because I was trying to sync my phone to a Bluetooth. She came to the window, and I just told her, I said, listen, I don't have anything left to say. I said, I'm done with all of this. I'm done with all of you guys.
So what happened next?
So she walked away. She started talking to Kush. I don't know what was being said because I was already inside the car. Between them, I rolled the window up. Started going through my phone to play a playlist.
What happened next?
I heard gunshots. That's all.
Did you look at the gunshots? Were there
No, I did not.
How many gunshots did you hear?
I don't remember. I don't recall.
We can back up a second because how did Mr. Thao get your gun?
I don't know. I don't recall. Like I said, I set it down and I don't remember. I don't know what happened.
Well, you set it down somewhere. You
Right.
put it in the roughly in your car.
Right.
And so you got back into your car without your gun?
Yes.
Why would you leave your gun behind?
Like I said, I just wanted to get out of there. Everyone, like I said, I was paranoid. I was high. And
Mr. Rattanasack, if you were paranoid, wouldn't it make more sense if you kept the gun with you at all times?
I just wanted to get out of there. Just.
When did Mr. Thao grab your gun?
I don't know.
Did you see him grab it?
No, I did not.
You said at some point you saw him with it because you saw the shot go off.
Right.
Did you say anything at that point, or?
It's possible.
What happened next?
I was in the car. I guess, I seen Bridget heading over to her car, and I was just going through everything inside of my mind, just trying to.
That was it. That was all it that was the only piece of recording I can find for him.
That's black. Black's in my phone. That's what she said, correct?
Correct.
Her testimony to you on the 26th was, I had forgotten about that, correct?
I don't recall.
Not testimony, but her statements. Apologize. I talked over you. Sorry.
Yeah, I don't recall specifically if that's exactly what her words were, but it was something similar that, oh yeah, I forgot I put him in there as that nickname kind of thing.
Okay. You also came to learn, not only during that time before she showed up at the police, that she got rid of digital evidence, she also got rid of physical evidence, right?
Yes.
Eventually, you came to learn, and it wasn't until I think it was like 18 months later, that on the 23rd, she had 2 8-balls of meth, correct?
Yes.
And that she took those 2 8-balls of meth and brought them over to a person named Tim Marks, correct?
Yes.
That in bringing them over to Tim Marks, she also told Tim Marks whatever her version of the story was on that morning, correct?
Yes.
She withheld that information from you and all law enforcement officers until April of 2023, correct?
She did not disclose that information until April of 2023.
That's another one of her lies, right?
I don't think it's a lie. She just didn't disclose it until then.
Okay. So that evidence that she had, the meth that she had, that's evidence, correct?
Would you repeat the question?
Sure. She said that she had 2 8-balls of meth, right?
Yes.
You would consider those 2 8-balls of meth evidence, right?
I could consider it a controlled substance.
Hold on. I found one more. This isn't a full clip. This is just a
controlled substance.
This is a news clip.
Dude, stop. Whatever it is I don't know what you're doing, but please just stop it. Dude, stop. Whatever it is that you're doing, don't do it.
Sitting in. He said, so he's saying that he told him, I don't know what you're doing, just stop. Based on what everybody else has said about him, I'm not really buying that so much. Oh, hold on. There's more.
Rattanasack testifies against him.
Everybody's just kind of yelling and arguing. There was just a lot of what I'd call baby mama drama chaos.
Thao.
Baby mama drama chaos.
In this case, could have been evidence, correct?
It could be.
You like to collect evidence, correct?
Yes.
If somebody gets rid of it, that prevents you from being able to do your job, correct?
No, it just means the evidence is gone.
Okay. It certainly makes your job more difficult, correct?
It depends on the context.
Sure. It may prevent you from figuring out whether that's true or not, correct? Somebody tells you a story, you do things to corroborate it. Is that right?
Yes.
And so sometimes physical evidence might corroborate a story that you've been told, right?
Yes.
So
Here's the link for that full
there's value in physical evidence, correct?
Yes.
There's value in digital evidence, correct?
Yes.
And when digital evidence or physical evidence is destroyed by a person involved in something, that makes your job more difficult, right?
It can, yes.
We talked a little bit about corroboration. That's something you're familiar with, right?
Yes.
That's something that you do in your job is you gather information from perhaps one source and then you check it against other sources, correct?
Yes.
Is that a very simple sense? That's what you're talking about when you say corroboration, right?
Waiting for over 45 years.
Correct? I mean, you test it not in a scientific sense, but somebody says they're not in your phone, you're going to go get the phone, check to see what it is. It's essentially a test of the truth of that person's statement, right?
Yes.
And in relation to Bridget Schlitt's information that she gave you about the phone, when you tested it, she failed, right?
She did not disclose that London Bridge falling down was in her phone.
She lied about it. You keep saying she did not disclose it. She didn't not disclose it. She affirmatively told you something that was untrue.
Yes.
That's different than not disclosing something. You agree, right?
I think you can have a lie of omission as well.
You certainly can, but a lie of omission is different than a lie of contradiction, right?
Yes.
Okay. So eventually in April of 2023, when you find out about her going to Tim Marks and taking the physical evidence and leaving it there, you found out about that, correct?
Yes.
Then you wanted to test that, correct? You'd go test it by saying, I'm going to go see if Tim Marks can corroborate what she says, right?
Yes.
So you, as an investigator, go look for Tim Marks, correct?
Yes.
Fair to say that you were never able to corroborate what she said about Tim Marks. Agreed?
Yes.
Hey, Zach. Busy day.
I want to ask you some questions about the Facebook messages, okay? There was a section of messages in here that you talk about regarding July 10th, July 11th, and July 20th messages to Nemo. I want to ask you about those, okay?
Okay.
And just to put this into context, you've been involved in the investigation of this case for the entire time, right?
Yes.
Got some background information as you sit here now that maybe you didn't back on July 23rd, correct?
Yes.
What you now know is that Nemo Yang and Nya Thao were at least acquaintances, if not friends, correct?
Yes.
And you've certainly, again, sounds stupid to ask you this, but you've had friends before, correct? You have friends now, right? Yes?
Yes.
Acquaintances.
Sometimes when you communicate with your friends, you might have different reasons to communicate with them, correct?
Yes.
Sometimes, again, there's just a whole plethora of them, but I won't go through all of them, but you would include, sometimes you might even give somebody a heads up, right? A warning, maybe a more technical term. You might say something.
Like a storm's coming warning or?
Sure, a storm's coming warning, both metaphorically and literally, right? Right?
Sure.
Right? And again, in both senses, literally like, hey, get the kids off the soccer field, there's a storm coming, right?
Yes.
And then metaphorically as well. Maybe that's less often, but you might metaphorically say like, the boss is upset, watch out. Something along those lines. You've done that in your life, I'm sure?
Oh, definitely.
Okay, all right. So in these, on July 10th, when Nya Thao sends a Facebook message to Nemo Yang, you have that in front of you?
Which page?
The July 10th, so I think it's the second page.
Yes.
Okay. Nya Thao is telling Nemo about another person, correct?
Yes.
He uses, again, the pronoun he, and Nya Thao appears to be referencing black, correct? Within the context of this, is that how you deduce it?
Big bro.
And as we go through there, in the context of these couple of messages, big bro is in reference to, or at least bro is in reference to black, right?
Probably, yes.
Okay. And so, and what Nia's telling Nemo is he, essentially black, ain't playing games, right?
Yes.
One interpretation of that might be a warning, correct?
Yes.
On July 11th of 2020, there's messages that Nya Thao says to Nemo Yang, And again, he uses the pronoun he at the bottom there, and he says, because he tripped, say me. Is that right?
Yes.
And again, within the context, one reasonable hypothesis is that the he he's referring to is black. Agreed?
Yes.
And Nya is telling Nemo black is tripped, right?
Because he tripped, say me.
So again, Nya is telling Nemo black is tripped, right?
Yes.
Tripped probably has a lot of different meanings in that world.
What world?
The world of Nemo Yang. He didn't mean literally like he tripped and fell down, correct? You don't know?
I don't know.
You've heard the word tripped mean perhaps somebody is crazy?
I would use the word tripping maybe for that.
Okay, but you've heard it used. Sometimes people use the English language differently than you. Could be used as the word crazy, right?
Oh, God.
Yes?
I don't know.
Could be used as dangerous?
I'm just looking at the context of it here, and it can mean many different things. I don't think it's
Including-
fair for me to infer.
Okay, well, let's just put some of the words that you would say are included in the many different things. Crazy, yes.
Possible?
Dangerous, yes.
I don't know.
Scary, yes.
Don't know.
In the context of this, it's if tripped means someone's high, why would Nemo Yang care?
I don't know.
Why would Nya Thao bother to tell him that another guy's high? Doesn't seem relevant, right?
I don't know.
Certainly might be relevant if it's like, this guy's crazy, right?
Could be.
And that could be, again, when a friend tells another friend of a warning, correct?
Yes.
All right.
He's trying so hard
And,
to
those
make
are
this
and then
work.
there's another text, or I'm calling them texts, but they're Facebook messages. But you know what I refer when I say text. It's these written communications via a phone application, right?
Yes.
Okay. And then the last one that's included in here is the one on July 20th about 60 to 80 and needing new tires, right?
Correct.
Okay. So we've covered the 3 Facebook communications that were entered into evidence from Nya Thao to his friend Nemo Yang, right?
Nemo Yang, yes.
Now these Facebook messages, you have the exhibit number 108, which is a CD which has digital content on there. It's like over almost 4,000 pages, over 3,000 for sure, right?
3,633.
Very precise, thank you. And on each of those pages, there are, let's say conservatively, 20 lines of content. Fair to say?
Sounds about right.
So there's tens of thousands of lines of content about messages going back and forth across Facebook Messenger that are included in Exhibit 108, right?
Yes.
And from those tens of thousands, what we have in Exhibit number 97 is about 30 maybe lines of content that have been pulled out and shown to people, right?
I can count them if you like.
Sure.
Oh my gosh, really? Really? We're going to sit here and count these? Really? This is what we're doing now?
Approximately 28.
All right.
This is the stuff that I just...
Yes.
And that was a message that I'm going to in particular talk about the last one there, but I think it said on the 1 a.m. on the morning of July 19th of 2020. Is that right?
Are you talking about the 104 and 52nd?
Yes, sir.
AM? Yes, there's a message there.
And we know from these same records that, well, let me just put this in the the message to Nicole appears to be Nya Thao telling something to Nicole to tell something to Nemo. Is that right?
Yes.
All right. And what we know, because in the same document, there's a message from Nemo Yang, or excuse me, a message from Nya Thao directly to Nemo Yang on July 20th, correct? That's, I think, page 3 or 4, I guess.
Yes.
Right. So just again to put it in context, according to the Facebook message, 19th, he sends a message to Nicole to send something to Nemo, and then on the 20th, Nya talks directly to Nemo, correct?
Yes.
And on the 19th, when he talks to Nicole, he is talking about, tell Nemo if he doesn't show himself, I'm going for his family. Those are the words there, correct?
Yes.
Again, like the rest of them, you don't know what that means, correct?
I think it says what it says. He's going for his family.
Okay. But as far as going for your family, doesn't mean if he's going over to talk to the family, if he's going to go do something else. Doesn't say explicitly, does it?
Sir, did anyone hear that text and think, oh, he's just going to scooch over there and chat with Nemo's family? Did anyone think that that's what... Is there any world where that's the interpretation that you would get from that text? Is there anyone?
Correct.
And as we know, throughout
The
these
answer's
things,
no.
there's all kinds of different words that are used in different ways and or typos, right?
Correct.
And one of the ways that you might determine the meaning of it is you'd go to either maybe the person who heard it, correct?
Oh,
And this was a
gracious
message to Nicole Wisnowski, correct?
Yes,
You didn't go and speak to Nicole Wisnowski, did you?
I did not.
So the context under which Nicole Wisnowski heard it is you don't know, correct?
No,
You agree?
I just know what's written. That's all I know.
Exactly. And what my question was is you don't know the context under what it was written because you didn't go and talk to the receiver of that message, right?
I did not.
Because you did not, you don't know the context.
Correct.
And you don't know what, if anything, Nicole Wisnowski did with this message, correct?
Correct.
But we know after Nya sends this message to Nicole, he sends a message to his friend Nemo about tires, correct?
He sends a message to Nemo Yang, yes.
And it's about tires, correct?
Well, no, it says, bro, we need to see like 60 to 80 to big bro. He
Yes.
needs new tires.
We need new tires, correct? That's how it ends, right?
That's how it ends, yes.
All right. Nothing in that message directly to Nemo Yang about family.
Big bro.
Okay.
Bro,
And again, in the context of all of these, big bro is in reference to black. Is that right?
possibly, yes.
Nothing in reference to here in those texts directly to Nemo Yang about Nemo Yang's family. Agreed?
Right.
No. All right. And you know through your investigation that trying to be some of these messages may be related to drugs, right?
Which messages?
The messages between Nemo and Nya, they talk about 60 to 80. That might be about drugs.
Or money owed.
Or money owed. Sure. Could be about a lot of different things, correct?
It could be, yes.
And you're again, involved in this investigation, you understand that there was a lot of other people that Nemo was hanging out with then, including people like Michael Vang, correct?
Yes.
And you know who Michael Vang is, correct?
Yes.
And again, slightly discreetly, we know Nemo's family might be involved with some activities with Michael Vang, correct? In that same world.
Yes.
Okay. Now, there's some Facebook messages in here about the term, we went through, about the term bro. Did you see that, correct?
Yes.
Bro.
And sometimes, I'm imagining you've heard the term bro used throughout your personal life as well as professional life, correct?
Yes.
And you've certainly heard the term brother, correct?
Yes.
It's certainly, do you have a brother?
No.
Okay. Sometimes you know, just through your life experience, that people can use brother in a broader sense than just familial, right?
Yes.
And even in a more informal sense when they use the term bro, correct?
Yes.
Right?
What, if anything,
it
do
might
these
be the
mean?
modern version
Nothing.
of dude, correct?
Nothing. So
It's
tedious.
possible.
You don't know. People use it for different reasons in different ways, correct?
Correct.
And in fact, there are times I know within law enforcement that you work with other people in law enforcement and you might consider them your brother, right?
Yes.
It's even though they're not familial with you, correct?
Correct.
All right. And sometimes you might even use that term with people you don't necessarily know, but because you share a common employment, right?
Yes.
All right. And as you said, there's times when you work with others, right? Like in the interview with Bridget Schlitt, you were second chair, correct?
Yes.
So you'll go into a room with somebody else, correct?
Yes.
It's another person that you're with, correct?
Yes.
And I would imagine that you've worked alongside many different people in your 28 years, correct?
Yes.
And sometimes, whether it's in the interview room or whether it's out in the field, sometimes happen.
You're allowed to
things happen
lead
that
on
you didn't
cross.
expect to happen, correct?
He takes it overboard, though.
Sometimes somebody that you might consider a brother or a bro or a friend might do something that you didn't expect that person to do, correct?
Oh my gosh.
Possibly, yes.
Yeah. Like even just a simple example, right? I know police are allowed to lie to people when they interview them, correct? You know that, right?
Yes.
You kind of had an expression on your face that looked as if you were like, yeah, we can do that, but you're not really proud of the ability to do that, right?
Well, I don't like to do that.
But you know it's something that can happen, correct?
Yes.
And you have that tool available to them, but you probably use it sparingly. Fair to say?
Yes.
All right. And there might be times when you don't approve of its use, right?
I'm going to object to relevancy.
Listening.
Please.
If
Thank
somebody
you. Gosh, why did we wait that
To an
long?
interview room with you, and they were a friend, a coworker, right? And they did something unexpected, like lie. You wouldn't be responsible for that, would you?
Objection, Your Honor.
Sustained.
Thank
Move
you.
on.
Move on. Go. Shoot.
The tens of thousands of Facebook messages that were in exhibit number 108, somebody made some choices about what the jury was going to see, correct?
Yes.
Some of those choices were was that you?
No.
And some of these, like for instance, the July 3rd to Shannon Gage, that's essentially the relevance of that is Nemo called bro black. Is that right? Excuse me. Nya called black his bro.
Your Honor, I'm objecting to speculation.
Okay. You don't know why those, I'll withdraw. You don't know why those would be considered relevant, correct?
Objection.
It is knowledge, intelligence, jury instruction 300, credibility factors.
For the jury, not for this witness.
Sustained. Just go ahead.
You're not here to tell the jury what weight, if anything, to give to the term bro, are you?
Again, Your Honor, objection.
Sustained.
Come on, move it along, move it along.
What you know is we're here to determine what happened up at the quarry, correct?
Yes.
And what you know is you interviewed Bridget Schlitt about what happened at the quarry, right?
Yes.
What you know is Bridget Schlitt said she was worried about getting in trouble, correct?
Yes.
What you know is Bridget Schlitt lied about what happened up at the quarry.
She did not fully disclose what happened at that quarry until after multiple interviews.
We've talked about the difference between not fully disclosing. She lied by deceiving and misleading you, telling you things that were not true. Agreed?
At times, yes.
That's all.
Is there much redirect?
There is, Your Honor, if we want to take a break.
Yeah, so let's take a bit of a break this morning.
All right, so that was painful. You know, the thing is like, I get that he's wanting to discredit all of the witnesses who said stuff that he doesn't want them to, you know, he doesn't want them to say, but dang, y'all, it gets so tedious having to go through all of that.
Number 5 on page 86. And
Okay.
Number 6 on page 87. We previously talked about clip number 6. If you want to just read those to yourself, and then I'm going to ask you some questions about whether that refreshes your memory.
Which interview is this?
Sure. This is July 23rd, 2021 at approximately the
He's back on the stand. This is the second video.
3 hours, 19 minutes, and 25 seconds, which is clip number 5 that I'm asking you to read.
Yeah, the things that he's trying to confuse are not things that are good. He's just not making good points.
And she said, I seen one gun. I looked back when I was walking, and I seen that he had a gun, and he was holding towards someone like this over my car. The older guy was. That's what she said to you, right?
Yes.
And then she's asked, so the guy that's in the driver's seat of the black car, he's holding a gun towards who? And her answer, when he's in the back of his car, he just had it out the window, Meyer, like pointed at you, Schlicht, yeah, and said, follow me. That's what she said, correct?
Yes.
Again, my original question, she said, when she came out of the Holiday Inn, he, being the older guy with the gun, pointed the gun at her and said, follow me, right?
At that portion of the interview, yes.
Okay. I want to ask you about Tim Marks and your attempts to corroborate that, okay?
Yes.
Sounds like you went to great efforts to try to figure out whether you could corroborate that, correct?
Yes.
And you did that because of the significance of what Bridget had told you regarding her interaction with Tim Marks, correct?
I wanted to corroborate her story, yes.
Because that's what good police work is doing, correct?
Yes.
Especially when there's perhaps a issue of contention, the fact of contention, correct?
It's good police work just to follow up on leads that are presented to you.
Sure. Especially in a triple homicide case, correct?
Oh my
Yes, in every
gosh.
case.
Yeah. But some cases, I would imagine you just work more hours on than other cases, correct?
Yes.
Some cases, you
You know what he reminds me of? You remember in school when you had like essays that you had to write and you had certain amount of words that you had to use and you would write it and then you'd be like 200 words short. So you'd go in and just add in a bunch of extra nonsense that doesn't really matter and you're not really saying anything, but you're just adding extra words. That's what his cross-examinations are reminding me of right now.
give more attention to than other cases, correct?
Yes.
That's just the nature of the work that you do, correct?
Yes.
And so in some cases, you might make a value judgment, for lack of a better term, about how much time and attention you're going to spend on the investigation, right?
Yes.
And in this case, about Tim Marks, you spent the time and attention to try to corroborate it by making calls to that person, correct?
Yes.
Going to their actual place of residence and knocking on their door, correct?
Yes.
speaking to other witnesses about how I can find that particular person, 10 marks.
Yes.
Finding out not only where they lived, but where they work, correct?
Yes.
And then even if they don't answer the call, what you did was you went to their place of employment and you spoke to that person's boss, right?
Yes.
You're really trying to find that guy, correct?
Yes.
Because that's an important person that may or may not corroborate another witness's statement, correct?
Yes.
That's just good police work, right?
Yes.
No reason not to do that good police work. Agreed?
Correct.
Lastly, you talked about people not giving you phones sometimes, okay? I want to ask you about that. Essentially, what I heard is people don't want to give you the phone because they think there's things on the phone that might get them in trouble, correct?
Yes.
So the reason they're not giving you the phone is to protect themselves from their own criminal activity, correct?
That is one reason.
On July 23rd of 2021, about almost a 6-hour mark into the interview, what Bridget Schlipp told you is, I don't want you guys to think that I'm lying or doing anything bad, correct?
Can I see the quote to make sure that's...
Approximately the 6-hour mark into that interview on the 23rd, Bridget Schlipp made statements to you about her motivation for saying what she was saying, right?
Yes.
And what she said was, I don't want you guys to think I'm lying or doing anything bad, correct?
Yes.
That's all.
Redirect.
No, Your Honor.
Can you step down? Can you just kneel?
All right, next up. See how much we can get in before I have to go. This is Leinfelder. This is the...
And what do you do for work?
I'm an investigator with the Cross County Sheriff's Office.
He's an investigator. We know this.
And show me the places on the map, on the screen behind.
Okay. Here we go.
Can I give you a second minutes? We'll go through. I'm a Cross County investigator.
Yes, I do.
I have a laser pointer with me. Can I have you stand and show me the places on the map, on the screen behind you when I ask you about them?
Yes.
Okay. Judge, is it okay if I have him leave the witness box? Thank you.
Lovely.
Are you familiar with where the Onalaska Holiday Inn is located?
Yes, it's a Midwest Drive in Alaska.
And what about the Baymont in Onalaska?
3300 North King Coulee Road in Alaska also.
And are you familiar with the mother of Nemo Yang?
Yes, that's Pazilki.
And are you familiar with where she was residing in July of 2021?
Yes, she was residing at N5606 County Road M as in Mary, which would be approximately right in this general vicinity.
Before that curve there?
Yes. Yes.
And are you aware of approximately how far away from the Romskog quarry that is?
Approximately 2 miles south of the rock quarry.
Investigator, can I have you actually mark the location you just indicated on the published visit on the physical copy of number 2?
Yes.
Thank you. Did you respond to the quarry the morning of the 23rd of July?
Yes, I did.
And what was your initial role upon responding?
Again, when we have an incident like this with the sheriff's office, we pretty much call everybody out. So it's kind of all hands on deck. When I got there, it was determined that I was going to be one of the leads in the investigation of the triple homicide.
Did you begin processing the scene immediately?
No, we did not.
Why not?
When we have a scene like this, any major scene, major crime, law enforcement's initial response to that would be to seal off the area, make sure they have limited access or no access into an area to preserve evidence. As soon as we do that, we make a determination, and then in cases like this one, a request was made to the Wisconsin Crime Lab for them to come to our crime scene and make the processing of the crime scene with the crime scene specialists.
You have to wait a while for them to arrive that day?
Yes, we did. They typically respond from either the Madison or Milwaukee area or a combination of both those areas. So once the request is made, then they have to do what they have to do to gather enough people on their response team to be able to come. So typically it can be hours before the crime lab arrives at our location.
What'd you do in the meantime?
I was paired up with Special Agent from the Department of Justice, DCI, Joe Welsh. He and I began doing a neighborhood canvass of the area. Basically, that means we're knocking on doors. On the map, you can see County Road S, which would be to the west of the quarry. Special Agent Joe Welsh and myself basically knocking on doors, talking with the residents there, if they had heard anything unusual, if they had any type of surveillance cameras, noticed anything out of unusual while we were waiting.
Were you part of the team that briefed the crime lab when they responded?
Yes, I believe the crime lab arrived around 10:45 that morning. We gave them a briefing of what we had known at the time regarding the crime scene. So that was part of my responsibilities.
Did you stay at the scene at that point?
No, I did not.
Were you part of Bridget Schlicht's interview on July 23rd?
I did not interview Bridget Schlicht. I did not sit down and interview Bridget Schlicht on the 23rd, no.
What about the 26th of July?
No, I did not.
At some point, did you assist with the interview of Bridget Schlicht by producing photo lineups?
Yes, I did. As information was being developed, I was able to produce some photo lineups that were going to be shown to Ms. Schlicht. At one point, I believe I came into the room and asked about some photos to her. Eventually, I did make a photo lineup that another investigator, as best practices, to have another investigator show that photo lineup to the individual.
And what's the purpose of the photo lineup?
To make it as clean as possible. I'm the one that's making the photo lineup, so I will have the information and knowledge of which individual in the photo lineup would be. So to keep it clean, so there's no discrepancy, the photo lineup is turned over to an investigator that has no knowledge of who the individual is, and then they do the photo lineup show in a specific order of things is how they would do it. So it's basically a way to keep it clean, so they can't come back and say that you're, here's the guy we're looking for. You're sure it's not this isn't the guy we're looking for. So it keeps it clean that way.
And did she positively identify Cam Rattanasack from a photo lineup that you completed?
Yes, she did.
If I can have you look at Exhibit 111, is that the photo she identified as being Cam Rattanasack?
Yes.
And was that a positive identification? Is that indeed who that picture is of?
That is, yes.
Your Honor, I move for the admission of Exhibit 111 as well as to publish.
Read, received, and published.
Your investigation went on for several days?
Yes.
At some point in time, was a vehicle located that was connected to the suspected targets of your investigation?
Yes, it was.
And what was that vehicle?
It was a black Mercedes-Benz.
And who was that vehicle registered to?
Virginia Creel.
And where was it located?
It was located at the intersection of Van Lanen and I believe it's Town Line Road in the town of Green Bay in Brown County in a very remote area.
Anybody with the vehicle when it was found?
No, there was no one with the vehicle.
Investigator, are you aware of when the criminal complaint in this action was filed?
Yes, I believe it was July 28th of 2021.
And did that criminal complaint include a make and model of the firearm that was connected to this incident?
No, it did not.
When was the make and model of a firearm tied to the evidence that was located at the quarry?
There was a suspected firearm that was located in April of 2023, and that weapon was tied to that based off of the crime lab's analysis of that weapon to say that that was the weapon that was used in these homicides.
Almost 22 months after the homicides?
Yes.
Are you aware of when the preliminary hearing took place related to this incident?
Yes, that would have been on September 10th of 2021.
Do you know if a defendant would have access to a case's discovery file prior to that?
No, the discovery file would not be released prior to a preliminary hearing.
Investigator Linefelder, can I have you look at Exhibit 100 that's in front of you? You recognize this document?
Yes, it's a timeline dated July 23rd, 2021, timeline of communication records and camera footage.
And is this essentially a summary, or blending of the exhibits we have already entered into evidence in this matter?
Yes, the timeline, as it is, the first time on the top of the page is 1:32 and 41 seconds a.m. And the last on this sheet timeline is 3:05 and 36 seconds a.m.
So does it combine the phone log of Bridget Schlicht, the communication between Mr. Thao's Facebook and Michael Vang's Facebook, as well as the timestamps related to the surveillance footage from the Holiday Inn?
Yes, it does.
Your Honor, I'd ask for the admission of Exhibit 100 and request to publish, please.
Another 30 seconds to finish reading it, Judge.
Yep.
Come on.
Document. Investigator, I'm not going to ask you to read this. Can I just have you tell me on page 1 what time frame we cover on this page?
On page 1, the time on the top of the page is the 1:32 and 41 seconds a.m. The bottom of the page is 2:08 and 12 seconds a.m.
Then if we can go to page 2, please. Can you please tell me here the time of the first item as well as the time of the last item?
Time on the first item is 2:10 and 33 seconds a.m. and the last on this page is 3:05 and 36 seconds a.m.
Thank you.
So 2:10 was, look at me slouched back sitting like my kid. 2:10 was 5 minutes after. Remember, they were at the hotel, Motel Holiday Inn at 2:05. And then Bridget got back to the Holiday Inn at like 2:53.
Investigator, as part of the process on this case, were several phones collected from various individuals?
Yes, they were.
I'm going to have you refer to Exhibit 102, please. Do you recognize this document?
I do.
See, I can't take all the long breaks in between questions.
And I'm just going to ask you a real basic question here. How many phones were put into evidence related to this case?
10.
10 phones.
I'm going to bring up a few exhibits now.
This part's so tedious.
Who's on there? Yes. Do you want?
With that one?
This is on the evidence. It's evidence number 21 with the time and date stamp. You want me to identify what's?
Yes.
See, this stuff
Is that
is,
exhibit 112?
112.
Correct, Judge.
Okay. I don't know if it's identified the number.
We'll go now to Exhibit 113. Can you please identify that for me, Investigator?
we don't need all the exhibit numbers. Oh my gosh, I love the zoom button. It makes my little ADHD heart happy.
And now 114,
Oh,
please.
this is, I went too far, oops. This is the shoes. We can't see them because he's out of the thing, but he'll walk back by in a second and you can see it. He's showing the shoes of the defendants.
And now 114, please.
These are the shoes of Peng Lor.
Shoes of Peng. So remember, showing that the bottoms of them, remember the shoes that they were showing by, when they were talking about the tracks, were Waffle and Chevron. So they're ruling out that those two types of shoes were from
Thank you, Investigator. I have nothing further.
the victims.
Right? Press?
Yes, please.
Oh no, this is going to be... Because remember, the prints that their whole thing with the prints was there are two sets of prints that are walking around the victims, and there was a chevron pattern and a waffle pattern, and so because the whole thing was that they were saying that their point was that both of the co-defendants. I mean, technically not co-defendants because it's two different trials, but both of the guys charged were around the guys and around the victims and all that. Because he made them crawl on their knees over to the gate.
Okay. Need a trash can?
Okay, thank you.
Which is really sad.
Ready?
Yes, sir.
I want to ask you some questions about your knowledge regarding methamphetamine, okay?
Sure.
You've been involved as a law enforcement officer for here coming on 32 years, correct?
That's correct.
You have some, based upon that professional experience, you have some knowledge of the impact that the use of methamphetamine has upon humans who use it, right?
That's correct.
In fact,
Yeah, from around
the use of methamphetamine
victims.
can cause hallucinations.
Yes, it can.
You agree that the use of methamphetamines can cause somebody to get into a state of paranoia?
Yes, it can.
You agree that the use of meth cause or play a part in somebody not sleeping, correct?
Yes, it's a central nervous stimulant.
And when somebody uses meth, they might be up for, more than 48 hours, sometimes days.
That is accurate.
And again, the use of meth alone, but certainly the use of meth combined with a lack of sleep, might enhance some of these symptoms of hallucinations, correct? And or paranoia.
Yes.
Okay. Can I display Exhibit 111? Is that something you... I want to ask you some questions about your interview of Rattanasack.
I really want to hear this part because this is about his interview with Rattanasack. I don't know how much I'm going to make it through. I have to leave here in a little bit, and I still have to change clothes. But I want to try to hear this part. This is his interview with Rattanasack.
Exhibit number 111, is that right?
Yes, it is.
Okay. You,
I think it supports Bridget's.
You met with him in July of can we get that displayed at some point? You met with him in July of 2021, is that right?
Yeah, I think they're trying to bring it up.
We'll move on and the picture will pop up.
Yes, to answer your question, I met with him in July of 2021.
Thank you. It was it the 28th of July?
Yeah, I believe it was the 28th.
It was not in La Crosse County, correct?
No, it was not.
Not in Wausau, correct?
It was not in Wausau.
Where did you meet him?
The Portage County Sheriff's Office, which is in Stevens Point, Wisconsin.
He had been arrested that day, correct?
Yes, he had.
And you you gained information, you were part of his arrest, is that right?
No, I was in the La Crosse at the time of his arrest, possibly traveling to Stevens Point, but I was not part of the arrest team at all.
You eventually learned of his arrest, correct?
Yes, I was notified by the Portage County Sheriff's Office that they had him in custody.
You learned of, you said you were already on the way, you learned that the whereabouts of Cam Rattanasack was known, fair to say?
Yes.
And so you started heading over there, and before you even got there, they had him arrested, correct?
Yes.
When your understanding, when he was arrested, he was with another person, correct?
Yes.
And the other person was driving a vehicle that wasn't stopped by the police, correct?
Yes.
And then when the Cam Rattanasack jumped out of the car and tried to run from the police and was eventually tackled, correct?
As I understand it, yes.
When you spoke with Mr. Rattanasack, he made admissions about his state of mind on July 23rd of 2021, is that right?
Which ones are you referring to?
Yeah, he made some statements about what his mind was like, right? His emotional state, his mental state.
I'd say it's accurate, yes. I'm not sure which ones you're referring to, but yes.
And I'm going to get into some specifics before I got to the specifics, just general. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
He told you on the 23rd when he was at the quarry, the words he used was he's pissed, correct?
I believe that's accurate. Again, I
appreciate it was 10 years ago.
It's been 3 years. It's been on the transcript. If you're reading from the transcript, I believe you. If not, I don't think. If you show that to me, it'd be probably refresh my memory better.
Goodness. All right, come on. So slow. I could not watch this in real time. Seriously?
Transcript.
Oh, okay.
You read that right now.
Zoom, zoom.
At the quarry, at least 3 different, he told you, fair to say that he told you when he was at the quarry, at least 3 different, he told you at least 3 different times during the interview that when he was at the quarry on the early morning hours of July 23rd, that he was, quote, pissed, right?
Yes.
And one of those times he said, I'm pissed and aggravated, correct?
Yes.
All right. More questions about his just kind of mental state at the time. When you spoke with him, he also told you he was feeling paranoid.
Yes.
He said he was freaking out.
Yes.
He said that he got even more paranoid. Right?
Yes.
These are, again, him describing to you his mental state when he was up at the quarry, right?
Correct.
And then he also talked to you about his use of meth and how that, regarding that day, that morning. Is that true?
That'd be accurate, yes.
He told you, I think, on more times than I could count, or I probably could, but that he was high on meth, correct?
Yes.
He said he used the word tweaking on meth. Is that right?
Yes, he did.
What does tweaking mean?
It's in the meth culture, drug world, it's mean you're high on meth. Tweaking, methamphetamine again is the central nervous system stimulant, so it kind of overwhelms the system. So people kind of can make appearance when they're using kind kind of like in a tweaking motion, for lack of a better term, but it's basically saying that you're high on meth when you say you're tweaking.
Not to be confused with twerking.
Again, regarding that state that he was in up there at the quarry, he told you that he'd been up for days. Is that right?
I believe that would be accurate, consistent with the story he was telling me.
Okay. I want to now ask you some questions about your investigation, okay?
Yes, sir.
This is a homicide done with a firearm, correct?
Correct.
I would imagine that you did investigation into the firearm, correct? Part of the investigation involved the firearm, correct?
Yes, it did.
Both as we heard about, it was eventually recovered and it's sent to the crime lab, correct?
That is correct.
But even without having the actual physical item, there's still things that you do as part of your investigation to determine what gun are we talking about, whose gun is this, correct?
Yes.
That's important to you, correct?
Would be, yes.
Right. And through your investigation, you determined that this was Cam Rattanasack's gun, correct?
The gun that was found?
The gun that was used, Cam Rattanasack's gun.
Based off the information that we were told about the scene, that Cam had the gun at some point and then gave it to someone at some point.
You investigated the ownership of the gun as well as the use of the gun, correct? I mean, you asked Cam whose gun is it, correct?
Is that on the transcript also? I believe I asked him that, yes.
And he told you it's mine. I brought it to the cross.
Yes.
Correct?
Thank you, Megan.
But you determined as part of your investigation that it's Cam's gun.
I received information that it was Cam's gun.
And once you received information that it was Cam's gun, did you do further investigation into the ownership of the gun?
I'm not following where you're going with that.
Cam told you it's his gun and he brought it to the cross, correct?
Cam told me that, yes.
And he told you that on July 28th of 2021, correct?
That is correct also.
And between July 28th and 2021 until the gun was found, you didn't do any other investigation to determine the ownership of that gun, correct?
We didn't have the gun until April of 2023.
Sure.
Sure.
So again, for whatever reasons, when Cam told you it was his gun until you found the gun, you didn't do any other work to determine whose gun it was, correct?
That'd be correct.
And then once you found the gun, right, sent it to the crime lab, correct?
That's correct.
And then the crime lab, as we heard, you were here when the firearm tools examiner testified, right?
Yes, I was.
You were here that she was able to recover the serial number of that gun, correct?
Yes.
I would imagine in your parts of your investigation, that's valuable information, correct?
Yes, it is.
Because again, in your work, you sometimes corroborate things, correct?
Yes.
And one of the things you'd want to know is, okay, now I got a serial number from the gun. Can I use that to trace some sort of ownership or anything like that, correct?
Yes, that's exactly correct.
Right? And sometimes you do that in cases, correct?
Yes.
Sometimes you don't, correct?
I don't know if I could say that sometimes I don't.
If it's an uncontested issue about whose gun it is, you might not spend the time and energy to try to track down the serial number and tracing the gun.
I would agree with you in that sense. If we had the undisputed, maybe a death by suicide case or something along those lines, we might not. If we were able to identify through other sources, yes.
When you got the serial number of the gun that was found and confirmed to have shot the bullets that were found at the scene, did you do any investigation into that serial number?
Yes, we did.
Was there anything that contradicted what Cam Rattanasack told you about it being his gun?
We were able to do a search on the firearm, and we were able to determine that the firearm was sold at the Gander Mountain location in Onalaska, and that had been shipped to the Gander Mountain in Onalaska in the year 2000. Gander Mountain is out of business and no longer retained any of those sales records, so we're not able to determine the original purchaser of that firearm.
And essentially what, again, doesn't contradict what Cam Rattanasack told you about his owning the gun, correct?
Does not.
All right. As part of your work, you also, I'm going to ask you some questions about Michael Vang, okay? You interviewed Michael Vang, is that right?
Yes, I did.
And you were here and you heard him testify, is that right?
Yes, I did.
And the interview that you had with him, that was recorded, correct?
Yes, it was.
So I want to ask you some questions about what was in the recording, because he said he couldn't quite remember. Does that make sense?
Yes.
You asked, in trying to summarize here, you were talking to Michael Vang about him communicating with somebody that he thought was black, correct?
Yes.
And he told you that he thought he was talking to a guy named Blackie on the phone, correct?
Yes.
Right. And this conversation that Michael Vang told you that he had with Black was about a debt between Black and Nemo Yang, correct?
Yes, the conversation that you're referring to is what was disclosed, yes.
In that Michael Vang told you that during that conversation that he had with Black, he remembered Black saying, let me back up for a second. During that conversation, Michael Vang told you that he had told Black that he was willing to pay the debt or that Nemo Yang could pay the debt, correct?
Accurate, yes.
And that Michael Vang told you that in response to that, when he told that to the person he knew as Black, Black said, "No, I don't want that. I want his life," correct?
I don't think that was the first statement he made. I don't think that was the first statement that he made, but eventually, I believe he did say that.
I'm going to show you page 13 of that recording, particularly line 305.
Attorney Nelson, can you just tell me the date of that statement, please?
Why don't we go ahead and turn this off so I wonder.
Dang, I want to make it through this before I have to go. I'm trying to.
Stack of papers here, sir. So we're on the same page. It's like the top of that, there's a date that says 7/24/2021, is that right?
Correct.
And it appears to be a transcript of an interview with Michael Vang, is that right?
Yes.
And you're one of the people involved as well as Michael Vang being involved, correct?
Yes, along with Special Agent Joe Welsh from DCI.
And then I want to turn forward to page 13. There's a paragraph here between lines 301 to 307, and I've highlighted the portion that I asked you about. If you could just read that to refresh your memory.
Yes,
So, you agree, Michael Vang told you that he heard Blackie say, "Nah, I don't want that, I want his life," correct?
Yeah, I think I agreed to that last time, yes, also.
Did you agree to it before or not? You agree now?
Yes.
All right. I want to ask you some questions about the concept of corroboration, okay?
Yes.
I've asked you that question before and you gave a very lengthy answer. Do you remember that? Not the actual word-for-word answer, but my asking you and in general you're giving an answer.
Do I remember you asking me questions and answering you? Yes, I think I do.
That's fair.
Oh my gosh, they move so slow.
Is efficiently might save us some time. So I'm going to ask you to just read a portion of what your previous testimony was when I asked you questions about corroboration. Does that make sense?
It does.
On page 157, on line 10, you can see here, essentially there's some questions leading up to it.
Yes.
So I would like you to read from line 10 on 157 until you're done answering, which goes to line 4. You can read it out loud to the jury.
You'd like to read it out loud? Okay. There's some things I knew about that we had through physical evidence and through other witness statements, and that's what we, when we are interviewing individuals, they're going to tell you truths, they're going to tell you lies. And what you do to differentiate between the two of those is you have to have your corroborating evidence, whether that's physical evidence, crime scene, or other statements you have that you're able to corroborate through to say, you know, this person said this person said this, and the third person might have said something different. So you can kind of piece together and put that together. That's how you do interrogation. That's how you do interviews, to make sure that you're getting accurate information. And that's your cross-checking, cross-referencing, checking what an individual individual is saying to you as to what would be the other evidence or other corroborating evidence within it.
Thank you, sir. You still stand by that testimony?
Yes.
Pretty fairly good summary of why you do investigation to see if you can corroborate what somebody else says, right?
Yes.
All right. I want to ask you about Michael Luko, okay?
Yes.
You were here when Mr. Luko testified?
Yes, I was.
He's somebody that you had previously met in the La Crosse County Jail, correct?
Yes.
So in this case, you met with him on August 13th of 2021, is that right?
Yes.
You filled out a report about your meeting with him, is that right?
Yes.
And you also recorded your meeting with him, is that right?
Yes.
What you put in your report is that you had been told that he had information about the case, correct?
Yes.
And you've been told that by Cam Rattanasack's lawyer, correct?
I don't recall Cam Rattanasack's lawyer telling me that.
Okay. Were you told that by the district attorney, Tim Grunke?
I don't recall where that information came from, if DA Grunke gave it to me or not.
Okay. What you know is you eventually met with Tim Luko, right?
Mike Luko, yes.
I'm sorry. Mike Luko, thank you. And Mike Luko told you he'd met with a private investigator, correct?
Yes.
And you came to learn that that private investigator was a private investigator that worked for Cam Rattanasack, correct?
Yes, that refreshes my memory.
All right. And so essentially that's how you got to go talk to Michael Luko, is you learned from Cam Rattanasack's team, for lack of a better term, that you should go talk to Luko, correct?
Correct.
All right. And you knew at that time when you went to meet with Mr. Luko that Mr. Luko was in a cell block with Cam Rattanasack, correct?
Yes.
So slow.
So I just want to go through kind of generally the interview that you had with Michael, okay?
Yes.
After you started by saying, I heard you spoke to somebody about the private investigator, you essentially said, what do you know, right?
Yes.
And then he told you some information that he says, here's what Nya Thao told me, right?
I believe that's accurate.
And then after that, after he gave you his version of what he said that Nya Thao told him, let me just say, the manner in which he heard this from Nya Thao was consistent with what I described when he was here testifying, that they were in isolation and he had to talk through a gate or a vent or something like that, right?
It'd be through a cell door with a window on it.
That's what he told you, correct?
Yeah, and I know the La Crosse County Jail, I know the cell block, so I have a better understanding of what he was telling me.
He told you that we were talking through the gate, right?
That's true, yes.
And then as soon as after you said that, you said to him, essentially, have you had any contact with Black? You asked him that question, correct?
Yes, I did.
And the reason you asked him that question is because you knew the reason that you were there is because essentially Black's team told you to go there, correct?
Yes.
That raised some, for lack of a better term, some suspicions for you, right?
I always have suspicions.
Sure. Part of your job is to question things, right?
Yes.
Some ways very similar to mine, just perhaps in a different context, right?
Correct.
Right. And so in some settings, you are more apt to question the information you receive than other settings, correct?
Correct.
And that might be based upon who you receive that information from, correct?
Based upon a lot of things, that would be one of them.
Sure. And what you told, one of the things you asked Mr. Luko that day is, essentially, did you just get this from Cam Rattanasack, from Black, so that Black can bolster his story, correct?
That is correct.
That's one of the things that kind of a red flag went up for you. Like, these two guys are in the same cell, he's coming forward with this, I got to ask him that question, right?
I always have red flags come up, yes, that's true.
And that certainly was a big, bright red flag in that situation, right?
It was a red flag.
And so one of the things you wanted to do is to see if you could corroborate that, correct?
Yes.
You wanted to check Mike Luko's story, correct?
Yes.
And so one of the things that you did is essentially say, did you tell anybody else? Does anybody else know about this, right?
Yes.
And he gave you the name of another inmate in that jail, is that right?
That is correct.
And that name was?
Kane Moss.
And fair to say that Kane Moss did not corroborate Michael Luko's story, agreed?
Kane Moss told me a story.
Did not corroborate, that's what I'm asking you, sir.
Correct, he did not tell the same story that Mike Luko said.
Michael Luko also told you to essentially go check with mental health, is that right?
Yes.
And in particular, Ben with mental health, correct?
Yes.
Because what he told you is that he had told Ben from mental health that he heard admissions from the shooter in this triple homicide, right?
Well, that would be an accurate statement. Accurate, sorry.
He may have used the word confession rather than admission, but same point, right?
As you're paraphrasing that, I would agree that would be consistent.
So I would imagine in your work, you get lots of different leads in any case, correct?
Yes, and especially in a case like this.
And in this case, even after Cam had been arrested, Cam Rattanasack had been arrested, and Nya Thao had been arrested, there's calls coming in by the hundreds, is that right?
Very accurate.
There's all kinds of different, like a better term, leads that the La Crosse Police Department is receiving, right?
Yes.
And you're the lead investigator.
Yes.
And your time is obviously incredibly important, right? That's self-serving for you to say, but you agree?
And time's always important.
And because you're one person, you're limited in how much you can do, correct?
We have a great team.
But even your team has, at the end of the day, there's limited resources, correct?
Yes.
You can't chase down every rabbit hole, correct?
As much as we try to, in a perfect world, we'd be able to, but that's accurate.
You just can't. You need to make some choices about what you're going to follow up on and what you're not, correct?
It takes so much time
Yes.
to get to
You need to
that
make some choices about what you're going to spend time and attention on and what you're not, correct?
In every investigation.
And there's times when you may make a value judgment, essentially, and say, that's not worth my time and attention to check that out, to test that out, correct?
I think we as a team make those decisions and make those triage decisions to see what we're going to be able to do, what we're not going to be able to do. That's accurate.
Exactly. You make value choices about how to spend that time. And sometimes you're like, it ain't worth it, right?
I guess they're triaged. We just put them in order of importance, what we think is, a positive lead, and you have all kinds of leads when you have an investigation like this. So yeah, you got to put them in order of what you're going to be able to do.
And something at the top gets the time and attention because it might solve a riddle, it might answer a question, correct?
Yes.
And something at the bottom of that list, you may never get around to it, correct?
Yes.
And it's at the bottom of the list because the information that you're trying to do may lack value.
Many different reasons why it may be not a priority.
Okay. So when you get done with speaking with Mr. Luko, you did some attempts to try to see, could you corroborate what he said about Bennett mental health, correct?
Yes.
You know that Mr. Luko had said, I'm willing to sign a release to give you access to that, correct?
I believe you said that in the interview.
And and he said that to you on August 13th, correct?
Yes.
And you have no reason to believe that since August 13th of 2021 that answer from Michael Luko would have changed, right?
I'm not following that question.
You didn't get a release from him, did you?
I don't believe I did, no.
What I'm saying is you didn't not get a release from him because he changed his mind, right? You didn't put a release in front of him to ask him to sign it, did you?
No.
You have no reason to believe that he would have ever refused to sign it, correct?
Correct.
He told you, sure, go look at it, right?
Paraphrasing?
Yeah.
Accurate statement, yes.
All right. So you made a call to Bennett Mental Health, right?
Yes.
And as sometimes happens, you weren't able to get a hold of that person on the phone, correct?
Yes.
I would imagine Ben at Mental Health for the jail is in the jail?
I don't know where his office is.
Okay. But I would imagine an investigator of your caliber would be able to find that, right?
Yes. I mean, I did.
Sure. And what we know is you then went back and you spoke to Michael Luko, correct?
Yes.
And you went back there and you started out by essentially giving him a warning, right? You said, do you have any idea the seriousness of filing a false police report in a triple homicide case? You said that to him, correct?
Yes, I did.
Fair to say that that's a warning, right?
Sure.
Right? Yeah. One of the other things you shared with him is that, just to be accurate, to quote, things like this have a tendency to come out in the end when somebody is trying to help themselves out and get themselves a little consideration. You said that to him, correct?
Yes, I did.
Then he went on to say, well, I'm not saying you're going to get the help. I'm going to say if somebody else that comes back that maybe gets convicted of a triple homicide is looking for some lenience or something like that, when he comes to hear their sentence off the tail end of it, that's going to come back and say, I told somebody to just tell this story. You told that to him, correct?
I think yes.
And the reason you told him that is you were basically like, I'm concerned he's in a cell with Cam Rattanasack, and Cam Rattanasack is telling him to tell this story, right?
Yes.
So then you continue your investigation, or you continue your conversation with Michael Luko, right?
Sure. Yeah, I don't know where he is.
He would technically be considered a spree killer because mass is considered 4 or more, or maybe it's 5 or more. Serial is serial as in repeating the pattern, and then spree is multiples at one time, or in one. Sometimes it can be not just at one time. Sometimes it can be like over the course of a week or something. It's just like you go on a.
To say, I checked with Ben, and he doesn't corroborate your story, correct?
Correct.
And when you told him that, he changed his story about what he told Ben, right?
I think he changed the language that he used.
Sure. And that's the reason why you told him.
Actually, I don't think it would be spree either, because spree would be. Because it was all done at the same place. So I don't think it would be spree either. Hold on.
What you did is to see, like, is that going to impact what he tells you, correct?
Yes.
Right? And when you told that to him, it did. The information that you gave to him changed his version of events, right?
I don't recall the exact statements that were made by Michael at that point. I think he reworded it. I don't know if it was a change, as you're portraying.
So let me just read from the transcript about your conversation, okay?
Thank you.
Would you prefer if I read it while I'm standing there so you can see it, or is it tears fine?
You're fine.
You told him, but you told me, right at the top here. You say, because you didn't say anything to the mental health professional about, and then he interrupts you. They just said they haven't been in the same block as the man that killed my friends. Which you say, yeah. Which Luko says, yep. And then you say, Mr. Leinfelder, you told me that you told him this guy was confessing to you. You say, he didn't say that to him. You say that to Luko, correct?
Luko referring to that he didn't, that I said to him, you didn't say that to him, referring to Luko didn't say that to Ben.
Correct.
Correct.
You told that to him, correct?
Yes.
And then you told him, he had a response, and you said, well, I got my notes from him, correct?
Yes.
And when you said, well, I got my notes from him, the notes that you're referring to are the notes from Ben, correct?
Yes.
And then you said, I think you're referring to Ben, he didn't mention that you said you were having some, I'm sorry, back up. But you said that you were having some anxiety because you were in the same block as one of the suspects. You said that to him, correct?
Those were my words, yes.
And then you said to him, but you didn't tell him that he was confessing. That's what you told him, correct?
That's what I told him, yes.
And then Luko changed his story from what he had previously said, and he tells you, well, I said, we'll talk about that when I'm comfortable. That's what Luko says, right?
Yes.
And then you said, yeah, but it doesn't make reference to that, correct?
Correct.
So what you're telling Luko is, I went to go try to corroborate your story. What you're telling him is, I couldn't corroborate it, it fails. That's what you're telling him.
That's what I was telling him, yes.
And when you told him that his story failed, he then changed it to a different story, correct?
You're referring to Mike Luko's story about talking to Ben.
Correct. Initially, he tells you, I told Ben this guy confessed to me. That's his initial story on August 13th, right?
I'll take your word for it.
Yes?
Yes.
You were there?
Yes.
And then you come back and talk to him and tell him, I checked with Ben, and Ben doesn't corroborate your story. He doesn't say that, correct?
That's correct.
And then in response to that, Luko backtracks his statement about the confession, right?
Your Honor, I'm going to object. That's misstating the record.
Luko, in response, when you say, but you didn't tell him that he was confessing, Luko's response was, and I said, we'll talk about that when I'm comfortable, correct?
You're reading off the transcript?
I'm going to object. I believe that that's misstating the record as well.
Let's just have him read it and we'll go from there.
Can I see the transcript he's working off of, Your Honor?
Oh my goodness. I really need to be going.
Whose response is, and I said, we'll talk about that when I'm comfortable, correct?
Yes.
And your response after that to Luko is, well, Ben typically keeps pretty good notes, correct?
Yes.
And then you leave from Mr. Luko on August 14th, correct?
Objection, that misstates the record.
You finish your interview with him and you leave, correct?
Correct.
And after you leave the interview on August 14th of 2021 until yesterday, you have no further contact with Mr. Luko. Agreed?
Your Honor, again, that misstates the record.
You can answer truthfully. I don't know what the record is until he gives the record. So I don't know what the basis of saying it misstates the record.
I believe it's also irrelevant, Your Honor.
It is relevant.
It's relevant. Go ahead. If you met him in between. Did you talk to him in between?
I've had contact with Mike Luko through the La Crosse County Drug Court. I'm the law enforcement liaison to La Crosse County Drug Court. Mike Luko is a drug court graduate of that, so I've had contact in that aspect of things in dealing with getting him through his addiction.
Would it be fair to say that you haven't had contact with him about what he told you on the 13th or 14th of August in 2021 about this case until you saw him the other day?
Yes, that would be accurate.
And fair to say that since August of 2021, he's essentially a new man, correct?
I would say yes, he's done very well.
And sometimes people, when they make improvements, they don't want to necessarily admit to something that would pull them back into that old world, correct?
I don't know about that.
I mean, certainly lying to a police officer is a crime, right?
Yes.
Perjury is a crime, correct?
Yes.
Especially if somebody had been warned by the police to say, you better not say anything that's not true, correct?
Yes.
There might be a motive for that person to just stick to their story, correct?
Me too, Kat. I want to know.
You can say that?
I'm curious.
You would agree with that? Not just I could say it, you would agree with that? That's a possible motive, correct?
It's possible motive, yes.
That's all.
All right. So we're gonna, there may be redirect. I don't know if, I think, is there gonna be redirect after lunch?
Yes, Your Honor.
Thank you. Was after lunch. We're gonna take a break. So let's, about 20 after, I want to try to give you a full hour and 15 minutes.
Okay, there's redirect after lunch. What time is it? But the redirect is only... $15 minutes.
Yeah. And, okay, hold
on, let's see.
And this is just putting into context the unpissed line, whatever that is.
Correct. This is just...
It's hearsay. I would have expected, if you didn't want...
This is their arguments. I'm
not... It was from page 91, page 110.
I've really got to go, so I'm going to skip their arguments. I want to hear just if anything else is said about the...
Okay, nothing else.
Okay, let's bring the jury.
Bring the jury.
By Attorney Nelson about your investigation as...
Okay.
Investigator Leinfelder, you were asked some questions by Attorney Nelson about your investigation as to whether the gun was owned by Mr. Rattanasack. Do you recall that?
Yes, I do.
And he asked you some questions about you not following up on that until 2023. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Why weren't you doing further investigation into the ownership of the gun at that point?
We didn't have access or the gun in our possession until April of 2023, and did not know that that was the gun until the crime lab's report from June of 2023.
What kind of information do you need to do follow-up on who may or may not own a gun?
Well, first we're going to need to have the gun in our possession. Serial numbers are one of the main things to be able to track down the history of the gun.
I don't know.
Thank you. You're also asking questions about your interview with Mr. Rattanasack. Do you recall that?
Yes.
And specifically about him telling you about being pissed. Do you recall that?
Yes, I do.
Investigator, I'm going to hand you the transcript of that interview and ask that you read from line 2317, line 2326, and please just indicate, I'm sorry, who's speaking.
Always.
Starting from that point, this is Ken Rattanasack saying, Kush is yelling at me. My response is, yeah. Kush's response was, while I'm arguing with Bridget.
You just start over.
Yes, I apologize. I know what you said.
You start over.
Cam states, Kush is yelling at me, which I respond, yeah. Cam says, while I'm arguing with Bridget, I say, yeah. And Cam says, and he's like, what the hell did he say? He said, what the fuck? He goes, you're supposed to be like fucking here with me. You know what I mean? And I'm like, he goes, but you're over there arguing with that bitch. And I'm like, my response then was, mm-hmm. And then Cam says, dude, I'm like, I don't want to be sitting here at all, period. And that's when I get frustrated and I got pissed.
Thank you, Investigator. Your Honor, I have nothing further.
Recross? You spoke with Cam Rattanasack on that day on the 28th for a couple of hours?
Yes.
Then you met with him again in 2023, April and May and June, probably somewhere in there?
Your Honor, I'm going to object. This is outside the scope.
Not getting into the details, Judge. I'm establishing a foundation.
All right, well, go ahead. Can you ask the question, please?
You met with him again in the spring of 2023, like April, May, and June of 2023, right?
I met with him in the spring of 2023, yes.
Over that, between the time in 2021 and 2023, sat with him for over 5 hours, maybe close to 8 hours. That'd be a good estimate, somewhere in that ballpark?
I think the first interview was probably 3.5 to 4 hours. I'd say that's accurate. Between 5 and 8 hours is what you said?
Yeah.
I'd say that's accurate, yes.
Okay. And over that time, you had an opportunity to gather information to form an opinion as to his character for truthfulness or untruthfulness.
Your Honor, this is outside the scope.
Approach.
Okay.
We approach. No.
I think that was the only question.
I have no other questions, Your Honor. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Ms. Step down.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, so that's it. So that's it, and they rested. Both sides rested. The defense did not call any witnesses. So that's it. They're done. So they're going to be doing closing arguments and jury instructions on Monday. So here's our plan. We have closing arguments for this one on Monday, and we have jury selection that starts on our next one on Monday. So the next one's really interesting too, and I'm glad that it's worked out to where this is like perfect timing, because the next one is going to be really interesting. And we're going to do an intro to it on Monday. So I'll get that set up sometime over the weekend. But he's representing himself. He is an attorney. He's representing himself. But he was an elected official in Nevada. There was a tip that went into a journalist named Jeff German, who was told about hostile work environment and drugs and all kinds of stuff going on under Robert Tellis's not authority. What is it? Under his administration, under his watch, basically. So, it's okay. Hold on, baby. So, anywho, Jeff German was stabbed in his home. Well, I think it was in front of his home, actually. So, and it's become this huge First Amendment argument around it and stuff. It's crazy. So we're going to do our intro to that on Monday. And then we'll do that first, because y'all know that this trial moves so slow and they talk so slow. So we're going to do our intro first so that we can let the attorneys get through their argument, so that way we can speed trial it. And then we'll just keep an eye out for verdict watch while we're starting our new trial. I don't foresee this being a very long deliberation. I am still really confused about how it was a hung jury the first time, I'll be honest. So, I don't know. But, all right, I got to go. I am so late. So, I've got to go. I appreciate y'all being here. I don't even have time to play the exit, so I'm just going to end the stream. I love you all, and I'm glad we finished it. I will see you Monday.